Hey, beautiful people, thank you for tuning in with History with Chemistry. Today we're going to talk about the history of the Ku Klux Klan. So the Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK, started December 26th of 1865. What's significant about this year is that was the year that the Civil War officially ended. And if you know the significance of the Civil War, is basically where black people were granted freedom with provisions in the country and was granted the right to vote, specifically black men. And since we all know that the South lost the Civil War, there was a lack of morale and like a lack of, I guess you could say, general positivity in the South. But we're going to focus on Pulaski, Tennessee. That is where the very first meeting, the very first talks of anything of a Klan started. There was 6 previous Confederate soldiers, now veterans, that decided to get together, and this was just going to be a meeting where they just drink and, just chit chat and just talk about the good old days. Until one of them decided we should make this meeting a group, right? And the group was going to be called the Circle. Until there was someone there of Greek descent and was like, instead of the circle, let's just go with the Greek word of circle, which is kuklos. There was someone else there that decided instead of Klukos, let's do Ku Klux. And there was an Irish person there that decided to add the word clan just because it is an Irish word. And instead of using C for clan, since Ku Klux already had K's, they were going to put K instead of C. And that's how we have the infamous KKK. Now, it is known that in the beginning phase, like in the inception of the KKK, they were just organized and they would get drunk. They would fuck with black people, but it wasn't nearly as extreme as we know it to be today, as it has been in the 1900s. Now, in the 1800s, yes, they were terrifying black people. They used the hoods as like a form of like fear to scare black people into thinking, oh, we're the ghost of the Confederate soldiers and we've come back to do whatever to you, right? For the most part, it was physically harmless. It wasn't until 1865 when the very first black person was beaten and it was associated with the Klan. That's when the Klan kind of made a violent turn. And that is when they elected their first Grand Wizard, Nathan Bedford Forrest. I say first because there was about 3 fathers of the Klan, and I'll get into that here shortly. A little bit about Nathan Bedford Forrest. He was a very, very, very racist white man. He was a slave owner, plantation owner, and he was a Confederate soldier. And if you can imagine, the Confederates were not happy. They lost the war, and he had a lot of vengeance out. Lots. Nathan was committed of numerous egregious war crimes, one of them being where some 500 black Union soldiers were surrendering, and he still ordered his soldiers to kill them all en masse, even though they were surrendering. And this was the Grand Wizard of the Klan. Like I said previously, once black men got the right to vote, that is when the torturing, the rape, the murder, all of these different brutal tactics that we know and affiliate with the KKK, that's where that started and where it came from. Because you have to understand the mindset of the South. If you're going to understand black history, you have to understand the mindset, right? This was not like you can't make this logical. You can't rationalize with this logic, right? These people are now free to vote. They're able to run for office. And considering that we treated them so poorly, what's to say they don't elect their own and they start to mistreat us? Although we all can see the logic in that, we don't understand the logic in going to the extreme of killing, brutalizing, torturing, and committing mass murder numerous times, hundreds of times, to ensure that these people don't do those things, right? Because you shouldn't have done them to begin with, but anyway. Now, at first, the KKK was simply just a group, just a clan, right? It had about 5,000 members, but they never really went on record stating who they were until 1868, when Nathan Bedford Forrest went to an interview in Cincinnati, and he said on record that the Klan was, quote, a protective political and military organization. Now, this provoked the government because now you have an active military organization that they have identified themselves as such, and they are a threat to the state. We all know that freeing the enslaved Africans in the South had more to do with crippling the South than actually caring about black people's lives. And at this point, you had a group that just got their asses whooped in the Civil War saying, oh, well, we're not going to take that L. We're going to organize again. And that could be a potential threat. And the government treated it as so. Although President Andrew Johnson was a racist, a outspoken racist, he had to put an end to this militarization of the Ku Klux Klan. And in 1869, he ordered that all robes be burned. But if these people have already defied the government and the U.S. Constitution, they're not going to just take, oh, stop what you're doing and just stop what they're doing. No, they kept doing it. So for years, the Klan decided to just ignore racist President Johnson saying, burn all your robes. But on April 20th of 1871, there was something called the Ku Klux Klan Act, basically making it illegal to identify as a Klans member and also making it illegal to have a robe. This act also activated some, 10,000 troops, Union troops, to go down to the South to ensure that this was being enforced and there was no active Klansmen, no Klan rallies, no things like that. This was the first of 3 deaths of the KKK. This death, though, came shortly before what we know as Jim Crow, black codes, things like that. So it wasn't like it was necessarily needed to enforce these things, because these Klan members, although they burnt their robes because they want to abide by the law, they put themselves in position to become legislators, to become police officers, so that they can enforce that racist mindset and those racist ideologies and lifestyles that they were trying to inflict on black people in a legal way. So the KKK wasn't really needed until 1915, when a famous movie that we all know to be so racist came out. It's called Birth of a Nation. This movie was the first movie to be screened in the White House, and the president, Woodrow Wilson, called it brilliant. If you don't know much about Birth of a Nation, I'm actually going to make a video about it on this page. I'm not going to get too deep into it right now, but the main theme of the movie that I saw was that there was a northern family that went down to the South. There was a civil war that broke out. Abraham Lincoln was killed, and that was the only experience that northern family had of the South, and that southern family had to make a good impression on that northern family. Now, of course, it's like a love story, but I don't want to get too deep into it, right? The reason I make that point is the Birth of a Nation was movies were fairly new. Okay, first of all, seeing live motion picture was a new concept. So in the North, all they had was to go based off of text, right? And images. And they didn't know what it was like in the South. Birth of a Nation kind of painted the South as being this patriotic, protecting the white woman's state. They're not Klansmen. They're Klansmen, but the Klan is actually a good thing. We need this. That is how Birth of a Nation was perceived in the North. Now, this was crucial to the South because first impression often lasts. And this actually worked for, I want to say, like 50, 60 years. Because now you have the KKK on screen protecting white women and protecting the laws of the state and protecting their rights. And they're so patriotic and they have this heroism about them. When in reality, down south, they were creating so much chaos, so much hurt and pain in the black community. And not only in the black community, because during this time, there wasn't just black people trying to help other black people. There was other white people. They call them Quakers. There were white people trying to help black people. There were also Native Americans trying to help black people, Mexican Americans. There was different groups of people that was also being terrorized by the KKK. Although this didn't get too extreme until the second resurgence of the KKK, they still didn't find. There was no reason for them not to mess with you if you were helping black people gain the right to vote or utilize their right to vote or teach them anything. But back to Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation was like a vital part in the resurgence, the first resurgence of the KKK, because in the city of Atlanta specifically, there was a preacher. He was a Methodist preacher named William J. Simmons. He and 12 of his congregation members decided to go up on Stone Mountain, which I do go into on another video on this page, how Stone Mountain was used as a KKK ritual and rally site. But J. Simmons, decided to take 12 of his congregation members, go up to the top, and set foot a 16-foot cross and set it ablaze. This was important because the concept of a burning cross hadn't even been thought of before Birth of a Nation. So this was a direct link of life imitating art. And now we see and can feel the influence of media. Part of the 12 members of the congregation that went up to set that cross ablaze was 2 original KKK members. So this was something of a ritual. And that is why we saw it so much thereafter the Birth of a Nation. This is going to be the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming right after this.